Welcome back to Finite Commander. Today I'm going to talk about my favorite deck, and probably my strongest deck, Kenrith the Returned King. He is definitely a popular commander in CEDH and casual, and just in general. Great card from uh, his set. He has 5 abilities, and he's a 5/5 for 5. 5-color commander. All 5 abilities are amazing, both to help you out or to tempt your opponents to helping you out through political shenanigans. Starting right with the first ability, for 1 red, you can give all creatures trample and haste until end of turn. So of course, you can play Kenrith, give your team trample and haste, and attack somebody. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Uh, the dream scenario is an opponent playing something like an Ulamog with Annihilator 4 and saying, hey, would you like all your creatures to have trample and haste? I will give it to you if you promise not to attack me. And if they accept, and they don't backstab you, which in my meta is not a issue, you're accomplishing 2 things. One, you are sending a huge threat at another one of your opponents, forcing that opponent to either answer it or uh, sacrifice 4 permanents and take 10 damage in the case of Ulamog. But I mean, this could work for any creature. And you could even throw it out there as a general offer to anyone, like, hey, if you want your team to have haste and trample, just let me know, and as long as they're not attacking to me, and I don't need the mana for something else, I'll be glad to give it to you. Great ability. It's served me well many times, and I think you really enjoy it. Number 2 is still pretty good. 1 colorless, or 1 generic, and 1 green. Put a 1 counter on any creature. Of course, this is great to pump himself up for the Voltron strategy and just kill people with commander damage. You can also use it to pump up your team. Um, I used to run a couple cards that gained extra value when you put counters on them. I don't run them anymore, but those are still valid options. And rarely, it might make sense to give one of your opponent's creatures a 1/1 counter. Hard to think of a specific example, but anytime you want something to survive, or you want to push damage through, someone's attacking with like Infect or whatever, and you can just pump it out of nowhere to kill another player. Of course, then you have to worry about that creature coming to kill you later. But in a free-for-all game of Commander, you should take any opportunity you can get. Third ability is target player gains 5 life. 5 life is a lot, even in Commander, uh, and this can really stabilize you if you're getting a lot of aggro early on or throughout the game. And we also use this to kill people later on. I'll show you that when we get to the creatures. Um, if you're feeling extremely benevolent, you could always just give people 5 life to actually heal them. Um, if that's your type of meta. I never do that, but the option is there if you want it. Fourth ability, 3 engine generic, and 1 blue. Target player draws a card. Almost always, I'm using this on myself, unless again you're feeling very benevolent. Um, if you have like millions of mana, you can make people draw their decks and kill them, which is a possibility, but the gain life is usually the main way we use Kenrith's ability to kill people. And then last but not least, 4 in a generic and 1 black to resurrect a creature from any graveyard and put it on the battlefield under its owner's control. Again, most of the time you're going to be using that on your own creatures, but rarely you might find a creature in an opponent's graveyard that would benefit you by bringing it back into play. Something like a uh, grave pact creature, merciless executioner, things like that, where they come into play. Everyone sacks a creature. Anything with an end of battlefield ability that could somehow benefit you, but usually you're just using this to regenerate your board. So let's jump into the creatures. I'll spend more time on some than others. But first up is a great creature, Archangel of Thune. By herself, she can uh, gain you life and put one counters on your entire team. But with Kenrith, you can use his life gain ability to put one counters on your team and gain your life for 3 mana at most. Um, so you could quickly build up your board for just 1 extra mana than using his second ability to put a 1/1 counter on a creature. You could gain 5 life and put a 1/1 counter on all your creatures, which can get quickly out of hand. Amazing creature, great by herself, great with Kenrith, definitely worth a spot in the deck. Next up, Bailstrix, just a standard good card. Flying Death Touch replaces itself. Um, Great just to have out there to dissuade people from attacking you because they won't want to lose their creatures. You could regenerate. You can resurrect it with Kenrith to draw another card and bring it back as a defender. You can attack with it if you really want to, although I find it much better as a defender piece. Moving on to Biomancer's Familiar. This is an incredible card for this deck. Reduces the activated abilities of all creatures you control by 2 to a minimum of 1. So this will make Kenrith's second and third abilities only cost 1 green or 1 white. And then you can draw a card for a generic and a blue, or resurrect a creature for 2 generic and 1 black. Uh, Makes all of your abilities much easier to activate. Just makes it that much easier to get out of hand with Kenrith and take over the game, especially drawing those cards. Drawing cards for 2 mana is amazing. And it's a creature, so you can bring them back with a third ability. Um, the adapt part does not come into play. It's just played for the activated ability, but definitely worth the spot. Birds of Paradise, just a great mana dork. Taps for all 5 colors. Consecrated Sphinx, an amazing card. Draws you tons of cards if you can keep it in play for more than a turn. And it's a 4/6 flyer, so it can definitely get into the red zone when you need to. Deathrite Shaman, another mana dork, which can also exile cards out of people's graveyards. So just a really nice, versatile mana dork, especially when people are playing fetch lands. And then again, you can use the lose 2 life or gain 2 life, but really to exile cards when people are trying to return them really keeps people on their toes and gives you a nice graveyard hate option. Dockside Extortionist. This is another favorite from CEDH. When it comes into play, you get a bunch of treasures equal to the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. We do not go infinite with this card, as easy it is to do. But just coming into play, giving you that nice mana ramp option. If it dies, you can resurrect it. We do run some sacrifice outlets in the deck to explore that avenue to really explode with your mana. But really, this is just a nice, quick mana ramp card. And the further the game goes on, the more artifacts and enchantments your opponents have, the better and better it gets for the low price of 2 mana. Amazing card. Eternal Witness brings back anything you want from your graveyard. And again, we can recur it with Kenrith. If you can sacrifice it, even better. Just brings back anything. Pretty much a staple in Commander, and it's definitely a staple in this deck as well. Fiend Artisan. This is a great creature, especially in this deck. You can sacrifice, speaking of sacrificing, you can sacrifice one of your creatures, pay X and a black or a green to search your library for any creature with converted mana cost X or less and put it directly into play. Now you can only do this as a sorcery, but still, Kenrith can bring back the creatures you sacrifice, and you can tutor any creature out of your deck, and the X mana cost is reduced by your Biomancer's Familiars and the other mana reduction cards we play. So just a great toolbox option, can get you any creature you need, and we can always bring those creatures back to just keep the loop going. And last but not least, it gets bigger the more creatures you have in your graveyard. so it can turn into a pretty menacing option all on its own the longer the game goes on, as long as your graveyard doesn't get exiled. Glenalandra Archmage, amazing card, basically a negate on a stick, but with Kenrith, you can use his add a +1/+1 counter ability to negate the -1/-1 counter after you persist Glenalandra Archmage, so that you can basically have as many negates as you want. Now, of course, your opponents can play around it when her persist triggers on the stack. When she's in the graveyard, she can get exiled, or they can cast their instance while the persist triggers on the stack. But once you get this in play, it makes your opponent's lives much more difficult. And she's a 2/2 flyer. You can always pump her up and get into the red zone. Great card. Very hard to deal with once you have Kenrith and Glenalandra in play. Love this card. Next up, Hull Breacher. Some people don't like this card. They feel it's a little too much stacks, but I'm not too concerned about that. The value is great, and when people are trying to draw, 10, 15, 20 cards in a turn, if you can drop this in response, they don't draw those cards, and then you get those cards as treasures instead, which lets you ramp out your other stuff and activate Kenrith's abilities, making people only draw one card a turn. Well, this one specifically, only the card they draw in their draw step, is incredible, and this card should be in every blue deck. I can understand if you feel like it's a little too hateful, but I like to win at all costs. This definitely goes in my deck. Next up, Linvala. This one I don't see in a lot of lists, but I think she's great. 3/3 for 3. Forget the party part. I did check. Unfortunately, we don't have a warrior in the deck, so the party part can never activate, but it doesn't matter. We're playing it for the second part, which is you sacrifice her, and all your creatures get hexproof or indestructible. Once you have her in play, it just gets that much harder to deal with Kenrith and all your other creatures. Basically makes you immune to wraths, immune to single target removal, and of course, Kenrith can bring her back if you have enough mana to just keep bringing the hexproof and/or indestructible shield online. There are some other options. There's one that costs 2 that gives all your creatures indestructible, but I like the 1 extra mana to also give you hexproof to fight against, like Swords of Plowshares, things of that nature. I really like this card. Again, haven't seen it in too many decks, but I've really liked it when I've drawn it. Definitely deserves a spot in the deck. Next up, Muldrotha. This is just a good stuff, 6 mana, 6/6. You can play all your permanents, or 1 permanent of each type, out of your graveyard each turn. So this lets you bring back your enchantments and your artifacts, and your creatures and your lands. Of course, Kenrith can bring back creatures on his own, but bringing back your fetch lands is great. Bringing back your artifacts and enchantments is great. And it's a 6/6 for 6 that Kenrith can give trample to. I really like this card. I could understand cutting it if you feel like you don't need it, but it helps you rebuild from like a planar cleansing or any kind of massive wrath that doesn't exile your whole board. Next up, Nessa Hall, the Primal Tide. This is Mystic Germora that costs 7 instead of 1, but he can't be countered. He's a Reliquary Tower, and whenever your opponent casts a non-creature spell, you automatically draw a card, so they cannot stop you from drawing it unless they drop a Hull Breacher or something. And you can discard 3 cards to exile him, and then he comes back at the beginning of the next end step, tapped. So when you're really building up your hand and then someone tries to deal with him, you can just exile him, and then maybe use Kenrith to bring back the creatures you discarded, or just discard a bunch of lands or whatever cards you don't happen to need. And it's a 7/7, so a great beat stick as well. 7 mana is a lot, but I think Nessa Hall definitely draws tons of cards, hard to deal with, Good beat stick. Can't be countered, which is always nice. Um, really like this card. Next up, Noble Hierarch, just another mana dork. I think that's the third and final mana dork. I play the three best ones you can play. All cost 1 mana, all tap for multiple colors. This one has the Exalted, which rarely comes up, but it's something. It's not useless. Next up is Notion Thief. Just like Hull Breacher, stopping your opponents from drawing is very important in non-infinite commander when people are ramping and drawing to the heavens. This card just stops that, and instead of giving you treasures like Hull Breacher, it just gives you those cards. Again, of course, you can bring them back with Kenrith. It's 3-1, so not great on the offensive side, but the card draw denial is amazing. Again, I can understand if you feel like it's a feel-bad card, cutting it. But if you don't care about that and you want to only be the one to draw all the cards, Notion Thief is great. Next up, Nyxbloom Ancient. Mana Tripler. So this card is amazing, and I used to run Rite of Replication with it to basically make your mana tap for something ridiculous like 900 or 700. I don't remember the exact math. But we all agreed that even though that wasn't technically infinite, it's basically the same as infinite. So I took Rite of Replication out, but Nyxbloom Ancient definitely worth its spot. Mana tripling is incredible. This deck is about getting as many lands as you can into play and then using Kenrith's abilities to grind out that value. And tapping a land for triple is definitely something you want to do. Plus, it's a 5/5 creature with trample, so it can definitely put the pressure on as well. Next up, Opposition Agent. This is another Hate Bear Staxy card, stopping your opponents from tutoring. But not only does it stop them from tutoring, you get to tutor for them, and you get to play the cards that they, or I guess you, chose for them to tutor. You also control them while you're searching the library, so you get to look at their hand, because, why not? This is an incredible card. It gets a little crazy if multiple people have opposition agents in play, because the way it's templated, it's actually a timestamp thing, so whoever who played it last is the one who gets to steal the tutoring. Would have been much nicer as a replacement effect, so the unfortunate tutorer could choose his opponent or her opponent or their opponent that they want to take their tutor. But Wizards, for whatever reason, decided that it should be time-stamped. So hopefully you're the only one with this in play, and then you can basically stop everyone from tutoring, because no one in their right mind is going to tutor once this hits the board. But, of course, it also has Flash, so you can steal somebody's fetch land, you can steal somebody's demonic tutor, vampiric tutor, whatever you want, and then take the best card out of their deck that works best for you and cast it yourself. Great card, potentially broken card. Of course, they can always just destroy it, but people don't always have single target removal when they need it. Next card is Oracle of Moldaia. This just is a great ramp card. You do give away information by letting everyone see the top card of your library, but you get to play 2 lands a turn, and you get to play lands off the top of your library. I was a little skeptical on this card, but it definitely puts in the work. You'll be surprised how many cards you get to play, both with just drawing them with Kenrith and playing 2 a turn, or playing them off the top of your library. And if you don't have a land top of your library, you can draw it with Kenrith's ability, and then if the next card's a land, then you can play that. So you can definitely pump out the lands with this card. Great creature. I believe it's played in Legacy and Vintage as well. And if those guys are playing it, it's a good card. So I've definitely enjoyed it in this deck. Seedborne Muse, incredible card. You know, we were we were happy to get a mana tripler. This is basically a mana tripler. Mana tripler for 7. This is basically a mana tripler for 5. You just have to add the mana during each opponent's untap step. And of course, if you have both, then you just, in La La Land as far as how much mana you're able to produce and how many activations on Kenrith you're getting, and you're probably definitely winning that game. But this also, gives your whole team pseudo vigilance, so you can attack with impunity and then untap every untap step. Um, Untaps everything, so your mana rocks, your lands. Just a wonderful card. Definitely love it in this deck. Next up, Shalai, Voice of Plenty. This is another protection. It protects you. It protects planeswalkers, which I don't have any in this deck. And it protects all your creatures except for Shalai herself. So protecting Kenrith is the name of the game. People will be wanting to destroy him at any cost. So putting these roadblocks in their way just depletes more and more of their resources. She does also have the activated ability, which if you have a couple reductions in play, could be worth activating. I don't know if I've ever actually done that, but it's there, so it's there if you need it. And it's 3/4 flyer, can definitely get into the red zone, but mainly played just for that protection to make them deal with Shalai before they can deal with anything else. And giving yourself hexproof can definitely be could definitely come up. A lot of graveyard removal is targeted against the player, so it kind of protects your graveyard. Um, but just a great protection piece in general. Next up, Shieldred, the Whispering One. Um, One of my favorite Praetors. I think the only Praetor that's still in this deck. Just puts so much pressure on your opponents, and then resurrects one of your creatures every upkeep or during your upkeep. Also 6/6 with Swamp Walk, which is not irrelevant. A lot of people play swamps. A lot of people can't block Shieldred. Um, just a great card. It is 7 mana, so that is quite a bit, but she definitely puts in work and earns her spot. Spellskate. This is just another great protection piece. Costs 2 mana, and either for a blue or for 2 life if you're holding that blue for something else. You can change the target of any spell or ability to Spellskate. I have caught people activating abilities that are positive and redirecting them to Spellskate instead. But usually this is catching a Path to Exile or Swords of Plowshares aimed at Kenrith or something else. You can only redirect things that could target Spellskate, so it has to be able to target an artifact or a creature. But just another great protection piece, and if it doesn't get exiled, you can always bring it back for more protection. Sphinx of the Second Sun, 8 mana is definitely a lot. This is fairly new. I've only been able to cast it a couple of times, but it gives you an extra beginning phase every turn, which is an extra untap, upkeep, and draw step. And you get it at the end of your second main phase. Or no, you get it at the beginning of your post-combat main phase. I'm sorry, no, I was correct the first time. You get it after your second main phase. So you have a beginning phase, untap, upkeep, draw. Then you have your main phase. Then you go to combat if you want to go to combat. Then you have your second main phase. Then you get your second beginning phase where you untap, upkeep, and draw again. And then you go to your end step. So the first time you cast this, you definitely want it to be in your first main phase. And if it survives to your second main phase, it was free, assuming you have 8 lands, because it will untap those lands. And then it also draws a card, so it replaces itself. And then from then on, every turn you are untapping everything, kind of like Seedborne Muse, but only on your turn. 8 mana is a lot, and I've considered cutting this, but every time I've cast it, surprisingly, it's stayed on the board and it's quickly run away with the game. So it's pulled its weight so far, but more to be seen. Because if you play this and it catches a Doomblade or a Swords of Plowshares, that definitely feels bad. Uh, Next up, the Scarab God. This lets you play creatures out of your opponent's graveyards. We'll exile them, so it's graveyard hate. You get a copy of it, which is a 4/4 black zombie, and then at the beginning of your upkeep, you get to make your opponents lose X life and use Scry X, where X is the number of things you've stolen from them. Um, he's also 5/5, and if it dies, you can return it to your hand. Um, and the activated ability can be reduced by your reducers, to just blue and a black to resurrect any target creature in your opponent's graveyards. This guy is incredible. He definitely needs to be answered immediately, because if your opponents have stuff in the graveyard, it's coming back and it's coming back to attack them. They are only 4/4s, but hey, I'll take a 4/4 Avacyn Archangel of Hope, or a 4/4 Consecrated Sphinx, 4/4 anything really. Um, as long as it's not in their graveyard anymore and it's serving you, that's a much better position to be in. Next up, Veto, Thorn of the Dusk Rose. This is what I was alluding to earlier regarding Kenrith's life gain ability. So as soon as Veto comes down, you're going to start killing people, because you're going to gain 5 life and they're going to lose 5 life. Um, he also has the activated ability where he can give your team life gain, which again works with your mana activated ability reducers. But really, it's the first line. Um, Kenrith, when tap for 3 mana, you gain 5 life, someone loses 5 life. You do that uh, 20 times, or no, don't do math on stream, 10 times, 8 times, you can get someone from full life to dead. But if you have a reducer in play, it's only 1 white mana, and then you're really killing people real quick. So this guy is definitely good. There are other cards like this, like Sanguine Bond and Tainted Remedy, but Vito's a creature, so you can bring him back from the graveyard if he dies. And he has that activated ability, which has come up from time to time. And if you give your whole team lifelink, you can just kill one player and then kill another player with his triggered ability. It only costs 3 mana too, so why not? You gain life, they lose life, everybody wins, or I guess just you win. And then last but not least, Zerda the Dawnwalker. This fox is just another mana reducer. It costs 3, so it's the most expensive one of the 3 that I play. But it's just as good as the rest. Reduces your all activated abilities, and this even reduces permanent activated abilities. So I don't know. Let me just look real quick. Give you a sneak preview here. I don't know if I actually have any other activated abilities. No. So I don't have any other activated abilities. But if you did, Zerda would work for them as well. But really, this is just here to uh, give Kenrith that extra gas, reduce his abilities. I mean, if you've got this and Biomancer's Familiar in play, all of his abilities only cost you the 1 colored mana. So resurrecting things for 1 black, of course, incredible. Drawing a card for 1 blue, incredible. And then he has an activated ability, or she, I'm not sure Zerda's gender. Um, Target creature can't block this turn. Does come up from time to time. You know, they've got some Death Toucher that's defending them. Just tap it, and then they can't block, or some, giant indestructible thing or whatever. Just tap it. It's only 1 creature, only once a turn. But hey, I'll take any extra ability I can get on a already very playable creature. So next up, sorceries. Just 8 in the deck, and I'll go through them real quick. Nothing too exciting here. Demonic Tutor, get anything out of your deck. Farseek, Land Ramp. Imperial Seal, like a Vampiric Tutor, but sorcery speed. Anything in your deck, put it on top of your library. Nature's Lore, land ramp, Sky Shard Claim, land ramp, Tempt with Discovery, land ramp. These two, they do cost 4. Sky Shard Claim, the 4s come into play untapped, so it's effectively only 2 mana. And Tempt with Discovery, depending on how greedy your opponents are, you could potentially get up to 4 in a standard 4-player game, or more in a bigger game. My opponents have learned to not be tempted, which makes this card not so great. You can just grab whatever one land you need. But if all of your opponents are greedy, they all get 1 land and you get 4 lands. I'll take that trade any day. But I have been thinking about cutting this as they've been getting smarter and not being tempted. But if your friends are greedy, definitely worth 4 mana to get 4 lands into play untapped. Unless they're all just going to get strip mines, in which case they're just going to destroy all your lands that you got. It's maybe not worth it. So definitely maybe another mana ramp for these two if you think they're too expensive. Some other mana rocks or whatever. But I like them, and I'm keeping them in for now. 3 visits, another mana ramp. These two, the forests come into play untapped, so they effectively cost 1. Always great. And then Toxic Deluge. It's always good to have a Wrath. I only have 1 in the deck, so you could make the argument if you're only playing 1, how often are you going to see it? But I think it's good to have. You can always Demonic Tutor for it, or Imperial Seal for it, or Vampiric Tutor for it. But Wraths are good. I thought about replacing this with Doomscar, the newest set out of Kaldheim. Might make that change, but Kenrith can gain back the life you pay. This gets around indestructible creatures, gets around basically anything, as long as you're willing to pay the life for it. So great Wrath, only costs 3 mana and only 1 black, which is nice in a 5-color deck. So probably going to stick with Toxic Deluge, but might try Doomscar out, or maybe as an addition to the deck. Haven't decided yet. All right, instants. Yes, we do play counterspells. We play quite a few of them. Arcane Denial. I know any CDH players out there are cringing, but in a non-infinite meta, giving your opponent 2 cards is not the end of the world. I mean, I would rather them not get 2 cards, so if I have Hull Breacher in play, this is a lot better. But countering something for 1 and a blue is countering anything. I used to play Negate over this, but Negate doesn't save you from Creator of Behemoth, or from an Ulamog, or from some giant creature. And when you're playing non-infinite, those types of creatures show up a lot more often. So I play Arcane Denial. I definitely understand its card disadvantage. You're giving your opponent resources, but I'd rather give them resources and be able to answer anything than lose to Creator of Behemoth or something of that nature. Assassin's Trophy, destroy any permanent, give them a basic land. Some people don't play basic lands, so they don't get anything. Sometimes you have an opposition agent in play, so they can't tutor. But I'll gladly give someone a basic land to get rid of some problematic permanent that's disrupting my game plan. Good old counterspell, Cyclonic Rift. Everyone loves Cyclonic Rift. 7 mana to get rid of your opponent's board states. Amazing, and amazing in this deck as well. Deflecting SWAT, great. We're always trying to protect Kenrith, but you can always deflect anything. Deflect extra turn spells, deflect anything you want. And with Kenrith in play, it's free. Love this card. Definitely belongs in any red deck. Very powerful. Dovin's Veto. This is my negate, but it can't be countered. So that makes it that has it make the cut. Fierce Guardianship, also negate, but it's free. So I'll take a free negate. Still sad when I can't counter a big creature, but free protection. It's just you can't pass it up. Mana Drain is the best. Mana draining their commander or something that costs 6 or 8 or something ridiculous, and then getting to use that mana yourself. This counterspell will always be the best. Play Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares. Um, just love that 1 mana removal, exile removal, so it's gone forever. Path is or Swords Plowshare is definitely the better of the two because life is not as good as a uh, land, but I play both. I have considered other things to replace Path to Exile, but for now I'm sticking with this one. It's been tried and true, and the other ones I've tried just don't hold up. Reigns of Power. This is an interesting inclusion. Um, if someone it basically lets you exchange control of your creatures and their creatures. Now, I will never give away Kenrith, so I will not play this with when Kenrith is in play. But if someone has some, crazy start where they just ramp out like crazy and drop a bunch of creatures and they're, threatening some huge board position, I'll cast a Reigns of Power instead of Kenrith and then attack them with all their own creatures and maybe sacrifice them to their own sacrifice outlet. Or if someone just had some major cyclotic rift and then they're threatening again a huge board position, you can take all their creatures and smack them with their own creatures, or you can always double team someone. Make a deal. In the rare case you are willing to temporarily give up control of Kenrith, say, hey, player A, let me take your amazing board state for a moment and kill player B, and I'll give you the creatures right back. No harm, no foul. Many people will be glad to make that deal. So this is a great card. I could understand cutting it, but I've had a lot of success with it. So it kind of goes with the whole Kenrith King nobility theme, and it can really turn the tides on someone who thought they were in a great position and you were in a weak position, and just kill them with their own creatures. And nothing is better than that, in my opinion. Fairies Protection, the best protection spell in the game. You just phase out. Your life total can't change. Nobody can do anything to you anymore. You do still exist, but I'm not aware of any way for someone to hurt you through Teferi's Protection. So it's the ultimate get out of jail, for 3 mana card. But I love it, and you always have to be aware. Someone got 3 mana up, they could play Teferi's Protection, and you definitely want to be in that club. Vampiric Tutor, I mentioned earlier, just another great tutor spell. Get you anything you want, put it on top of your library, and then draw it with Kenrith, or do it at your opponent's end step. And then Veil of Summer. I've really enjoyed this card. Lets you protect your deck from, or protect your spells from counter spells, protect your creatures from blue or black spells, so like a Rapid Hybridization or a Doomblade or anything that's blue or black. It is hexproof, not protection. Correct myself there. So it'll only work against spells, but still, you draw a card. So in a lot of ways, this is like a 1 mana, 1 green mana, um, 1 green mana Cryptic command, where you counter someone's spell and you draw a card, which is just ridiculous rate. Um, but it also has the protection. Someone wants to counter your spells, you say no. Someone wants to kill your Kenrith with a Doomblade, you say no. And you get to draw a card to replace itself. Incredible card, 1 green. What was Wizards thinking? I don't know, but happy to play in the deck. Artifacts, nothing exciting here. 6 mana rocks. Chromatic Lantern, a lot of people think this is too expensive, but I just like being able to fix your ramp, or I'm sorry, your lands. Kenrith is a mana color hungry commander, and we do have to worry about what things tap for. That just makes your life a little easier. Talisman of Curiosity was the only one that made the cut. But again, if you don't like Sky Shroud Claim and Tent for Discovery, I would definitely just throw in another couple talismans. Chromatic Lantern could easily be a talisman also, but I like Chromatic Lantern, so I play it. Um, Arcane Signet, taps for anything. Felwar Stone usually taps for anything, or at least most colors. Mana Crypt is free mana, and Soul Ring is basically free mana. And Mana Crypt, you can negate the life loss with Kenrith, which does happen if you're unlucky. So moving on to enchantments, Carpet of Flowers, another CDH staple, and I think should be a staple in any green deck, because people love playing islands, and I love ramping off their islands. This can quickly get you 3, 4, 5 mana a turn for 1 green. It could be any color. This is an incredible card. I think more people should play it. It is $18 according to this website, so it's climbing ever higher. But it's a great card. Drop it down turn 1, and you could ramp. Drop it down turn 15, and you could probably ramp even harder. And if you drop it in your first main phase, you can use the mana in your second main phase. It doesn't trigger off both main phases. Only one of your main phases do you get that free mana, but still, great card. Only 1 green. I definitely consider this a mana rock. There is the rare situation where no one is playing an island, but that's pretty rare in my experience, so I'm not too concerned about that. Mana Reflection. So 6 mana, all your permanents tap for double. This is, it's expensive. 6 mana is quite a bit, but 6 mana to double your mana production, including your mana rock, so your Soul Ring taps for 4. I think it's worth it. I just recently added this over Sword of Feast and Famine. Sword was great, but you had to attack, and then you had to use the mana after with the damage on the stack, and there's just a lot of hoops you got to jump through. Protection from black and green is nice, and making the discard card is nice. But I'm trying Mana Reflection instead of the sword. Might switch it back. Haven't decided yet. But Mana Reflection is the gold standard of mana doubling. Although probably the mana tripler now is the gold standard, the creature that I talked about earlier. But it's still a great card, and I love this new art. Chris Seaman, great job. That's beautiful art. Miraris Wake, kinda Mana Reflection, and unfortunately these two do not work together, according to my understanding, because Miraris Wake is the thing that's adding the mana, not the permanent you're tapping. But regardless, it's a 5 mana doubler, only for your lands, and it's also an anthem. So it costs 1 less, buffs your team. This one's definitely staying. I've played this for a long time. Always happy to draw it. Just a great card, and mana production is all the name of the game with this deck, so definitely like it. Mr. Germora, another CDH staple. Drop a turn 1, probably going to draw a bunch of cards. You can pump mana into it over a couple of turns, and then let it go to the graveyard. Maybe you can bring it back with a Eternal Witness or Muldrotha. But even just the one play for 1 mana, it's going to draw you more than 1 card, unless your opponents are extremely patient. And in the meantime, if they're not playing non-creature spells and you are, hey, you're preventing them from casting their spells. So I'd probably pay the Community Flop Keep maybe twice, maybe 3 times, and then let it go, and then maybe bring it back later in the game. But really like this card, and the further the game goes on, the more and more likely people are going to be casting those spells, letting you draw cards. And then it's Buddy Ristic Study. If people are diligent, they will pay the 1, but in my experience, even patient players will get tired of paying every turn. So you will draw cards off this card in all but the most stringent play groups. And hey, free card draw is free card draw. Smothering Tithe, Ristic Study's best friend. People usually will not pay the 2. They're happy to, or they're not happy, but they'll let you get the treasures, especially if they're drawing a lot of cards. Occasionally, if they draw their card for the turn and decide, whatever reason they're not going to use their mana, they'll pay it. But hey, then you just took 2 mana away from them, and usually they're not going to pay it. So first time around, you get 3 treasures. It's almost paid for itself, and it's just gravy from there. This is a great card, one of the best cards they've printed in white in a long time, and hopefully they'll print more soon. But in the meantime, we'll take what we can get. Survival of the Fittest. Discard a creature card for 1 green and search your library for any creature card, put it in your hand. So this can trade one creature for another, and then you can use Kenrith's ability to reanimate the creature that you discarded. So hey, discard your 8 mana Sphinx of the Second Sun to tutor up a I don't know, a Hull Breacher, or a Notion Thief or an Ixbloom Ancient, because why not? And then reanimate your Sphinx of the Second Sun. So that's just value right there, and that's a pretty big play, but you can make small plays too. Get your mana dorks, get your protection pieces, get whatever the situation calls for, and being able to reanimate those creatures with Kenrith is just the icing on the cake. This is a very expensive card. This is the foil version, so they're not all $1,200, but even the base card I know is expensive. But if you can get it or you don't mind proxying it, incredible card. Definitely an all-star in this deck. Silvan Library lets you see the top 2 cards of your deck, or top 3, I guess, depending on how you look at it. And hey, if you want to pay 4 life and draw them, you can pay 3 mana to gain 5 life. So really, you're drawing a card for 3 light or 3 mana instead of 4, um, which is Kenrith's normal rate for drawing a card, and you're gaining a life on top of it. So this is a great card in any green deck, but especially in Kenrith, because you can negate the biggest downside to going all in and paying 8 life to draw 2 extra cards. That's not such a bad deal when you can just pay 6 mana to gain 10 life. So you're up 2 life, and you're up 2 cards, and you actually save 2 mana off of just paying 4 mana to draw 2 cards. So hey, great card in general. Definitely see this in many CDH lists, but in Kenrith, it's even better. So we'll take it. Training Grounds is the last, but not least, or I guess the least mana cost. So potentially the best, depending how you look at it. The creatures are reanimatable, so in my mind that makes them a little better. But Training Grounds only costs 1 blue, so you can drop it turn 1, you can drop it turn 4, right before you cast Kenrith on turn 5, or drop a Ristic Study and a Training Grounds. Just another great card. It's same thought process to the other 2 mana reduction abilities. And then the last enchantment, Wilderness Reclamation. This is another mana doubler, quote unquote. Untap all your lands at the beginning of your end step. Just another great one. And it's the cheapest one at 4 mana. Uncommon. So if you're strapped for cash, this is definitely one to pick up. Only $3, and you can double your mana production every turn. And all the mana you can get, you can always pump into drawing extra cards, or gaining life, or doing whatever it is you need to do. And then last but not least, lands. I'm not going to go through each and every one of them. We got your standard 9 fetch lands, 10 original duels, and then a selection of shocks. I've got Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, Mana Confluence. 2 things I did want to call out. I play Reflecting Pool. I think it's definitely worth it in a non-combo meta. I play Phyrexian Tower. A little dangerous to play in a 5-color deck, but you can do some cool things with it. So you can sacrifice your Eternal Witness for 2 black, and then pay 2 green to, to pay 3 generic to activate Kenrith and reanimate Eternal Witness. So once a turn, you can play anything out of your graveyard, not just creatures. So that's definitely a nice ability to have. Also, if someone is trying to steal Kenrith with like a Gilded Drake or control magic or whatever, you can sacrifice him, or you can sacrifice any other creatures. You can sacrifice your creatures with enter the battlefield abilities, which I don't know honestly if I play any, which is a little unusual. Usually ETB is like the name of the game in Commander. But if you had enter the battlefield, I guess Baleful Strix, which that's a pretty small play, but you could do that. But it's mostly there to abuse Eternal Witness and protect Kenrith. And then the only other card I wanted to mention, excuse me, is, where is it? The World Tree. The World Tree. So this is a brand new inclusion out of Kaldheim. I actually cut City of Brass, believe it or not. But hey, it fixes all of your mana once you have six lands in play. This is a dicey inclusion. It only taps for green, comes to play tapped, which I hate. None of my other lands come into play tapped. But once you hit that 6 mana threshold, then all your lands tap for everything. So I'm testing it out. Might go back to City of Brass, but it was new and shiny, and I wanted to try it. The activated ability is completely irrelevant to this deck. I do not believe we play any gods. Maybe the Scarab God. Does he count as a god? He does, but he'd never pay 10 mana to get the Scarab God in play. Maybe you would. I don't know. I guess that is an option. But yeah, so that's the deck. I will include a link to the deck list in the description. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you gave you some good ideas for your Kenrith deck. Really love this deck. Definitely my most powerful deck. And I hope you'll join me for the next video where I'll be talking about another one of my commander decks. See you next time. Goodbye.